This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. You're listening to the Lansing Online News Radio Show with Bonnie Bucqueroux and Bill Casimir on what appears to be a stormy night, a dark and stormy night here in downtown Lansing. I noticed Bill wincing, and we're a little loud and hot on the mic there, are we? Or, or did you get rained on today? I heard you went to Eric Schertzing's kickoff for his.
I did.
Yeah,
It was at the Clark Hill Law Firm in Old Town. It was not surprisingly. I guess I should have expected it would have been as crowded as it was, but I think Eric would have been is very happy.
That's
the kind of people that showed up there, including one of the candidates for governor, Mark Schauer, the Democratic candidate. But he pretty much had every elected official in the city there.
Well, that's great. I was on my way there. The downpour occurred. I'm a bad driver, so I turned around and went home because I figured that I was rather than get washed out on the way there. So I'm really sorry I missed it, but that's good news.
There will be more. Pat Lindeman would have agreed with you, because the drain commissioner I was talking to. We were talking to him about water goes where it wants to go.
Water does go where it wants to go. And in my case, I'm always hoping that's not my basement. We have a guest coming up tonight, Karl Gude, who spent some time bailing out my basement at one of my parties. He was very kind. He was part of the bucket brigade. So, yes.
I'll do anything for great food.
But, in fact, I'm going to move that over here. We do our live webcast at the same time. If you go to LansingOnlineNews.com, you will find us there. But, Bill, I wanted to also ask you, there's an upcoming event. It's tomorrow night that there's going to be a kickoff for a new book?
Right, a kickoff locally for a new book. They've already done this in Detroit. It's called Detroit Resurgence. It is a book that is edited by Howard Bosson and John Beck, who are both MSU professors. And what it does is it features the photography of Guy Perrin and Nicole Iwenzik. And it is more than 60 photographs, portraits of Detroiters from all walks of life. But there's a strong leaning toward the arts, the humanities, the food movement. And it gives you a feel that Detroit is not bankrupt because the people aren't.
Right.
I mean, these people are they're not what you consider the movers and shakers like the Dan Gilbert, who is not in this book. They're the people who start businesses and run them, employ 10 people. They do art, they do things that matter, and it kind of leaves you with the feeling that if Detroit's in the hands of these kinds of people, it's gonna be fine.
Everybody wants the feel-good story about Detroit. I hope they're right.
Yeah, and everybody wants the big mo about Detroit.
I know.
The big mo is not happening.
No, it's going to be small bore.
It's going to be small bore for a long period of time.
We're gonna. Terry wants to chime in.
I can't resist. I was born in Detroit, but it's happening. I've been going down, doing a lot of work down there the last 3-4 years. We're looking to open up an office down there. I'm so excited what's going on in Detroit. I mean, it's amazing. The transformation is definitely happening. So yeah, I'm very positive.
Well, good to hear. Yeah. Well, now there is going to be this event tomorrow night. Bill, give us
tomorrow
some
night,
details.
Which is Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Schuler's Meridian Mall. Howard will be there and John will be there. And what they will be doing, will be walking through how this book came to pass, which was very serendipitous. There were a lot of that going on in this book, and I think it's enjoyable from this. What makes the book different to me? It's not a photographic book. There's a series of essays. There's a series of interviews with the people who are the subjects. There's a poem, and it kind of makes the book. It adds any one of those portions would not have made a book.
Right.
Together they make a different kind of book.
Well, the couple comes from Europe, and they've been using their large format camera. They go around the world and they document people in their environments. And so Howard Bosson knows them well. When he teaches at the School of Journalism, as do I, and so his study abroad class, his photography students go over there and work with this couple and have an opportunity to learn from them while they're there. John Beck, as we all know, is part of what I always still call it labor and industrial relations, but it has a new name.
It has a different name, but what I think most people know him for is Our Daily Work, Our Daily Bread.
The brown bag
lunches he's been doing for 15 years, maybe more.
Yeah.
And his aspect is the work, and Howard's is the history of portrait photography and how this man thinks, how the photographer thinks.
So that'll be, give me the details again on where and when?
It's at 7 o'clock. It's at Schuler's Meridian Mall, and they will be there to discuss their book tomorrow night.
That sounds great. Well, I did want to take a moment of personal privilege and talk about the fact that I went Saturday morning and took some video. If you go to my YouTube channel, if you go to YouTube, my screen name there is Bucky, Bucquui. You will see a video that I did because the Mid-Michigan Ukulele Group did a memorial for Kristen Batdorf, the young mother who was killed, and it was a murder-suicide that occurred in Lansing, and it's one of a string of far too many that we've been seeing. And it comes on the heels of the mass murder that was done by Elliot Roger out in California that has led to a sort of new urgency to the conversation about violence against women in the culture. And I went out there to the memorial, which was quite moving. I had found a video online that Kristen had done just a couple weeks ago of her playing one of her favorite songs on the ukulele called I'll Fly Away, which has a very prophetic lyric about when I die. And so I was able to capture some of that video. They did that song at the memorial, and then I put that part of her video at the end. And it's really profoundly disturbing to see the kinds of situations that we are facing in the culture. We see those two young women, the two girls who, because you can't afford to have a bathroom in your house, these young Dalit girls in India, they used to be called the untouchables, the lowest of the castes. They have to go out in the fields to use the bathroom at night, and they were attacked and raped, gang raped, and then hung from the mango tree in the community. We're seeing this kind of awareness of a spectrum of violence of women across all cultures. Women are not just, we like to think that we're the civilized culture and we have everything under control. But situations like going out to the Batdorf Memorial remind us how much women are at risk. And there are statistics that confirm that it's when women are either pregnant or leaving their husbands that they are at the greatest risk of violence from a partner. And it's a disturbing kind of question about how are we raising boys in this culture? Are we raising them to think that they are the ones who control relationships, that only they should have the power to say yes or no about whether the relationship continues or not? There's a new internet meme that's been going around on Twitter that I've been part of that conversation. It exploded and it's hashtag yes all women. And the reason that it's called Yes All Women is because we want to acknowledge there was a hashtag that started by men called hashtag Not All Men. A lot of men wanted reassurance that because they're good guys and they wouldn't do something like this, they wanted us to spend our time rather than talking about the problems for women to talk about how let's reassure the men that they're okay, that there are a lot of men out there that don't do this kind of thing. And it's true, there are a lot of men out there that don't do this kind of thing. But as somebody who has been a victim of domestic violence myself, I was thinking just the other day about a time where it was the night before I was leaving to go to Mexico. I was young, I was in my mid 20s, I was having a good time, I was getting ready to go to Mexico the next day, and I decided to go and see a friend give a lecture at a library that night and down in Jackson. And I walked to the bookstore after the lecture closed, and I heard footsteps behind me. And we talk a lot about profiling. In fact, we're worried about profiling people. But I kept looking over my shoulder to see whether it was a man or a woman behind me, and trust me, women do that. It makes a big difference to us. If we see a woman behind us, we're not going to worry as much as if we see a man. And I saw a man behind me, I thought, but then maybe he slipped into the shadows. I went into the bookstore. I said, "Did you see anybody behind me when I came in?" They said, "No." I decided I better get back to my car, and I was attacked on the street. I was able to get away from the man, but I found out that this was a young man who had already raped his teacher earlier in the week. He had been remanded to his family, who said they would take care of him and make sure he wouldn't do anything. He was a that kind of violence on the street kind of thing. I don't know why it was that would have ever happened. I found out those details later. But we see so much violence in the culture and we see violence against women. And I guess maybe it's time in this society that we start finding out what we do about this. And I'm sitting here with three guys looking at me like, I don't know if I want to chime in on this or not. But I just wanted to bring that up because I found it profoundly disturbing to go to that memorial. I feel like I've been to too many of them. I feel like we have to have this conversation. We have to start figuring out how we end this. Any suggestions would be greatly welcomed.
I don't think there are any right now, but it needs to be discussed just like we're doing right at this time. I think also we should just keep in mind that we should probably ask back Rena Risper.
We had a situation, she wrote on Facebook, that the man who does barbecue on the street called the Meat Man was attacked and beaten
Severely,
on
I
the
mean,
street,
it's really
in the
severely.
hospital in a coma, and yet there'd been no local media coverage. I was the coordinator of the Victims in the Media program, and it is disturbing. How do we cover these kinds of things in a way? I felt that the Elliot Rodger case was turning into sort of violence porn. We're fascinated with the mind of the serial killer, with the mind of the mass killer, instead of realizing that it's not a puzzle to be solved. It's a real problem in the culture to be solved. And I think we have to find a better way of writing about these things. I will bring in Karl Gude, who is my colleague at the School of Journalism. He's here to talk about the creative process, but you, when you worked at Newsweek, Karl was at Newsweek magazine for many years as the information and graphics editor there, the information graphics editor. Um, how do you feel that the magazine did? How did they tackle trying to not glamorize violence, but at the same time, you want to sell newsstand copies?
Well, that's been always the challenge for media. If you watch local news in New York City, for instance, it's just one string of murders after another. I don't know whether they're pandering to their demographic, like some of the tabloid newspapers do, versus something like the New York Times that's sort
Headless
of
corpse in topless bar, the New York
exactly. That's a
Post
great
cover,
headline, by the way. But it's a question of the media is trying to sell newspapers. They're trying to get advertisers. Violence sells just in papers, just like as it does on TV. It's even kind of more sick that they're selling this because it's real, and
If it bleeds, it leads.
if it bleeds, it
Yeah.
leads.
Yeah.
If it leads, it leads. And those little girls that were hung in India, they were top of the story. And one of the, it's a terrible relationship that media has with that. So you say that there was nothing in the media about it. Well, we were talking just before we went on the air that there's a racial aspect to this.
Yes,
There's a
yeah.
sexual aspect to this. There's so
Some
many
victims count more than others.
some victims count more than others. There was a story in New York. A young white girl from Texas was killed in a very ritzy neighborhood. She had just moved there just a month before, and she was killed, shot by a burglar, an African American burglar, and it became this big racial thing. Not about the fact that a black man had shot and killed a white girl, but it had been a white girl who'd been killed in
Right.
this horrid way in New York. In New York City, she was front page of the New York Times. She was front page of New York Magazine. And when this young woman was killed by her husband last week, I felt a similar feeling when I saw this girl from Texas this woman from
Right.
Texas on the cover of the New Yorker, that she was front page of the Lansing State Journal, I believe. She was everywhere, and I felt a horrible story. I read every word. I felt horrible all day, but I thought, if she were someone else, she would not have been on page one, and she may not have been on page
Well,
one.
we had the summer of the missing and then later murdered little white girls that went on, Samantha Runyon and Danielle and all of and then it was at the same time that Jean Benet, right? I got contacted by a man from EquiSearch in Texas because he wanted me to help him publicize. This was when I was doing Victims in the Media. He wanted me to help publicize little Dana Riley's disappearance. She'd been gone for 6 days and she was getting no coverage at all. And the only difference that we could come up with was she was African American and the other girls were white girls. And that was the reason for the national media attention. And victims shouldn't count more just on the basis, it's almost as if it's a celebrity kind of
It's not about
situation.
counting. It's not about whether they matter more. We all know that they matter equally. We do. We do know this most of us know this. But to the media, it's about who their audience is and who do they want to read about. And I think that it's the educated. It's a different audience. I don't know what the demographics are for the local media audiences,
So
but
what
I tell
makes-
you, I think think they're pandering to the audience more
Why
than
am I not the
not-
audience?
Well, that's it. I mean, that's the other part of the
Because I don't
question.
read them.
Right. But
I generally am out of the loop. I mean, I know someone got murdered. I didn't know the details. Really, I didn't.
we're kind of
Bruce Shapiro, a good friend of mine, wrote for the Nation magazine. He's now with the Dark Foundation out on the West Coast, looking at some of these issues. And the reason that this became a big issue for him was he taught journalism at Yale. And as is with many urban colleges, there's some neighborhoods around there that are a little sketchy. And he was at a coffee shop that was not far from Yale. And a homeless man came in and wanted to use the bathroom, and they wouldn't let him. And when he was denied the ability to use the bathroom, he pulled a knife from out of his coat and he stabbed 7 people. None of them died. Bruce was one of them. Okay, they all went to the hospital. They became such a focus of media attention, a huge media circus. Bruce said, I'm in a hospital bed. I've lost my spleen. I don't know if I'm going to live. I'm getting calls from CNN in Czechoslovakia asking me about why it is that this happened here in the United States. He said, I get out of the hospital a month later and I'm looking backward. And he said there was a young African American girl 3 days later, a block away, walking down the street. A drive-by shooting, a random bullet hits her in the head, kills her. She's a one-day page 3 story in a local newspaper, no national coverage. So
And
I
it was
really,
probably one little paragraph.
I mean, quite honestly, I don't think it's just pandering to the audience because people did care about the Battendorf killing. I think it is, again, I mean, they will care if it's one of their own. Is that what the problem is? Is that why
I think
it
it's
appeals?
much more deep than that.
Yeah.
I think a little of it is what Carl's talking about. It is pandering. The people are, I mean, our entire society right now is just overwhelmed with violence, whether they're movies, books, thrillers.
Yeah, it's a huge
We were
issue,
talking
isn't it?
about the Game of Thrones.
Well, now every homicide will get covered by the Lansing State Journal, right? But not every homicide's going to get covered in a big city because there's
Yeah.
just too much.
Well, not a local homicide, but they're looking for the big ones though.
Well,
And
they are.
so at Newsweek, we were there for a whole week. We planned the magazine for a week, and the beginning of the week it was pretty slow. Nobody wants to read a week-old news when that old magazine came and hit the stands a week later. But so we always worked on a feature story like diabetes or something for the cover,
Yeah.
and we're always hoping for a big story. That big story has many faces. It can be anything. And in America, remember the sniper that was shooting out of the trunk of his car?
Yeah.
Washington.
Big story. Now that was exciting news. Magazines flew off the stands. They
Yeah.
just flew off the stands. Horrible tragedies fly off the stands. Our biggest selling cover for a long time that held the record was Nixon's resignation. That was finally surpassed years later by Princess Di's Death in That Tunnel.
Oh.
And then that was blown away. Couldn't print them fast enough by the 9/11 attacks,
9/11.
which I was there for. And but get this, the second most widely purchased magazine topic for Newsweek was women's health.
Really?
Women's health. Women are great consumers of health issues. Men's health sat on the newsstands. Nobody bought it except the wives trying to convince their husbands that they should eat better.
Quit
Were
eating
you-
bacon.
Were you around? What were you doing? What was your job at the time the Central Park jogger was attacked in New York? Were you in the?
I was. See that I believe
Did that happen on your watch?
that not my local watch. I did work for the New York Daily News, the eyes, the ears, the honest voice of New York,
wow.
New York's hometown paper. I loved working for a tabloid. By the way, they're not what you think they are. They're not the New York Post. They actually considered the New York Times their competitor.
Right, they did. Didn't they?
And there were some ridiculously intelligent and capable journalists there. Then there were always the characters like a guy named Jimmy Breslin, and a lot of great fun. I had a lot of great fun there, but I covered a lot
A
of
woman
homicides.
from there edited one of my op-ed pieces, and she was most brilliant. She did most brilliant edits I've ever had done.
Yeah, they're really great. They're great. But anyway, I don't recall where I was when the Central Park jogger was attacked, but I certainly consumed that news because I lived right on the border of Central Park, and I think you're right about looking behind you, seeing if it's a man or a woman. Men did the same thing, certainly in Central Park.
If you see a woman behind you, has a man ever had a chill go up his spine saying, "Oh my God, I'm in trouble now.
Maybe
There's a
if I
pack of
saw-
women behind me." No.
If I saw you, I saw your haircut back in those days.
You know what your vehicle is.
Well, true. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Karl Gude, who teaches at the School of Journalism at Michigan State and who is the former information graphics editor at Newsweek, about how it is that why is that we all know that violence is a lure. We all do. I mean, we grow up on Grimm's fairy tales. And if you take a look at Hansel and Gretel, oh my God, putting kids in an oven, there's a cheer.
Ring around the rosy. I mean, like, who knew?
And that's tradition that goes back centuries. So
It is.
We probably aren't experiencing anything terribly different.
But if you layer in race, class, and gender, all of a sudden it becomes a pretty toxic stew.
Yeah.
And you're right, there are the worthy victims. There are the people who appear blameless, everybody connects with, and those are the ones that, if they're with the right, they're pretty enough. I mean, I was talking with a former writer for People magazine who came and talked in one of my classes, and she said this is not on the issue of when we were talking about women's health. She was doing a series on anorexia and on various kinds of problems, and she had been working with a number of families, and they decided to cut because they had space problems from featuring 4 families to down to 3, and she had to tell the family that their child wasn't going to be covered for the anorexia story, even though she'd spent months with them. And she said you really didn't want to sit in on the meetings where they decided how they were going to figure out which family to cut.
Oh, it was
how cute they were.
I was gonna say it's I years ago I did a thing on the missing link, the history of man through
Yeah.
all this revolution, all the Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, all these guys,
Yeah.
and it all wound up with modern looking humans. And so I just picked someone from my department and took their picture and stuck their picture in Newsweek. Ugly, right? So just a normal guy, and that
this
was
is what we've become.
that was not going to fly.
No.
I showed that to the editors at Newsweek, and we wound up bringing in a Ford model photo, and we put a Ford model.
I'm so sad.
I should find that and send it to you. But
That's hilarious.
so there's all of these really, it's hilarious juxtaposition of Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, and then there's this Ford model's face. It looks insanely stupid.
And you know what I've never understood about that sequence? Why don't they have a man and a woman all the way along the line? Because it really says that whole sequence only says the only ones that ever counted
We're
in our
men,
genetic
yeah.
pool.
Well, we had that woman in there. It was great.
Oh, you did? You had a
but
woman in
we
there?
had she was the Ford model.
Oh.
Nobody wants to look at
Oh,
male.
she was oh.
It was a thin Ford model
I
at the
thought it was
end
a
of the
guy.
family tree of man.
That's the
I
evolutionary
thought it was a
outcome.
Ford model, but he was male.
No, it was a Ford
See,
model,
they
and
were
it was a
they were
woman.
very forward thinking.
And Newsweek was just as we were, and they still are. We were totally into sex. We were totally into good-looking people. Brad Pitt wanted to be on the cover, not on the cover. He wanted to have a story about him. He agreed to this, about his philanthropic efforts, because he did a
Down
lot
in
of
New
different things
Orleans?
that were different from his wife, and she was always everywhere for her efforts.
Yeah.
Angelina Jolie, and he wanted to be sort of talk about all the cool things, not about him. He's kind of a great guy. He wanted to be
Yeah.
about him. He wanted to talk about all these other things, these other needy organizations that he worked for, and Newsweek is a great forum for that. And we wanted to put him on the cover. Shoot, Brad Pitt on the cover?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Newsweek was like, yes. And he said, I don't want to be on the cover at all. And if I am, I'm going to be on the cover with a lot of other philanthropists that are not known. I want to be a group cover. And that's what we did.
You did do it.
We did. We put him on the
Oh,
cover with a
good.
lot of other people. And he was a
With
good
the
guy.
light shining on Brad. So
No, I don't know if it was that transparent, but I'm sure he was probably standing in front with his arms crossed, going,
You take a look at in the last maybe 20 years, magazines like running magazines have turned to sex sells.
Look at what they did to poor Sarah Palin.
Yeah, Palin. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's running in the primaries, and they put her there in her shorts on the front of Newsweek and on because it came from a running magazine. And then
And you just have
anytime
to-
they get to
just have
show her
to
legs.
There was a lot of criticism for that photo, though.
But Tina Brown was a genius. She was doing these because she knew she would get the magazine talked about. I mean, she put the most provocative, controversial covers possible on there for that reason. And the media ate it up and did it.
Yeah, I never worked for her, so I worked for, I've worked for a lot of. I've seen a lot of turnover in journalism, a lot of change in journalism, and
Certainly.
she was a big change. Certainly when she hit the New Yorker, and
That was, I think, the most stunning change.
it was the most stunning change, and it was great though. It was great to watch all these, I imagine, very stodgy old
Oh,
pruny men and women who just like their New Yorker the way it's been
The
since
Sean
1920,
era,
and all of a
yeah.
sudden she's going, "We're putting fashion ads in here," and it was like,
no.
"What? You can't do that. You can't do that to our New Yorker."
What
And
happened to John McPhee's 10,000 words?
I know.
You know.
but it was great to listen to the outrage, really, to read about the outrage. It was really great fun to see outrage on, and I had my own desires. I didn't want to lose the comics, the cartoons.
Yeah. Oh, well, they had
Um,
In the transition to new media, that stuff still sells. Sex still sells in Facebook and
even
violence.
more so
it's
with
it's all
anything.
about humor, violence, and sex.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. I did a video that went viral, and it was a butt. I shot it.
Yeah, how to draw a boat.
How to draw a boat with
What?
5
I
lines.
know, when I saw that,
It
I went,
was-
what?
It was stupid. It was like I show kids how to do this stuff. And whenever I'm at parties, I'm kind of bored, and I show.
What really ground me though was that YouTube wouldn't let you monetize it because somebody complained.
I don't know if anybody complained, but they thought it was sexual content. It's not even, it's not even.
Picasso drew a
act-
butt, and that was
It's
very
human
famous.
anatomy, and it's not sexual at all. It's just a
No.
stupid butt, and
But butt searches well.
well, yeah. The reason I drew it wasn't to go viral, wasn't for any other reason except because when I'm at a party with a lot of grown-ups, there's always there's a bored kid around who's 10 years old. I'm like, hey, you want to go draw? Get some printer paper, and they say sure, and I'd rather spend time with a kid. So, but ultimately, years ago, a kid said, do you know how to draw a butt? And I said, I don't know, let me try. And we figured
5
it
quick
out.
lines, right?
5 lines, and we figured it out. And after that, that's been the sort of the star of anything I'm drawing with. They
Yeah.
all want to know. So I did that for all the 10-year-olds in the world. But
Of
YouTube,
which you still remain one.
and I remain one. And YouTube didn't want to monetize it because it was sexual content. I don't know if anybody complained, but they did. I appealed, and they did monetize it. And just in time, actually, I made about $800 or $1,000 on that in 1 month because it went from 1,000 views to 1,000,000 views in a day.
See,
5 lines.
see.
And it took me 15 minutes to make that.
I
But
used
anyway,
to have the Picasso woman that was, I think,
Yep,
one
just-
line. Yeah.
Can you imagine
Yeah.
what would happen if you were drawing a breast?
well,
Oh,
nobody
you-
cares about breasts. It's funny to say
It
the
is,
word.
it's bu-
I asked somebody, why did you watch this? And I'm reading the comments. It's just the way I say the word butt.
bull-
Yeah.
They love the way I said the word butt. I was like, that's a butt.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, okay, it's not. Anyway, I digress as
That's the real
usual.
reason that we invited Karl
Yeah,
here is because
we
Karl-
kind of got
I'm
out.
a
Not only because-
new media sensation here.
he can draw a mean butt, but because
All this work to be well known for something, as a matter of fact, the greatest line was from a colleague of mine in another college at the university, having achieved this 1,000,000 views in a day. She wrote me in cynically and to be funny and said, your dean must be so proud. Which was just the perfect thing. I wanted to frame that. I just thought that was so funny.
But one of the things that proves, by the way, is that you don't make as much from those viral videos as people think you do.
No, but if you have a lot of them, if you have a
Yes.
lot of good things out there, and did you read that Gangnam Style just passed 2 billion
Yes,
views?
2 billion, yeah.
2 billion views. I'm sorry to say Justin Bieber is the second closest at 1.2.
And if
Why do I know
anybody would
this?
like,
Because
my
I read.
personal favorite is if you search maple bacon, it's the talking dog. I'm a sucker
Oh.
for the talking dog.
Oh,
And see, that's the
I love
problem.
the dog. I know who you're talking about. I
Yes,
love that.
we know that it's coming though. You see, this is the problem. Everybody's looking for clickbait now.
Yeah.
So online journalism was supposed to revolutionize the industry so that
What
we
did you
could-
call it?
Clickbait.
Click. Oh yeah, I called it link bait. Yeah,
Ah, yeah,
it's same thing.
clickbait.
Yeah.
This would be a good time to bring Terry in because
He's-
he is just going, oh, I want to talk about this stuff too.
Yeah,
because
just jump in.
it's
Look,
easy.
we're just a bunch of.
Message Makers is, I think, a company that is all about
Yeah.
messages and getting them noticed, aren't they, Terry?
We're more about content.
Oh, Terry.
Yes, right.
You'd take that 1,000,000 views in the butt any day.
That's part of the challenge.
It's
We do
funny.
we're focused on helping people tell their stories and obviously, getting the word out. Sort of thing.
And you do it very, very well.
But I invited Karl here tonight because Karl teaches some classes that on creativity and on the creative process. And it's fascinating because, and it is a good pairing here because really what I wanted to talk about was Karl had a piece in Huffington Post talking about how if kids have a passion for something, if they're just burning to do something in their life, you need to be able to get that out. Creative people have this, they'll actually get sick if they don't get this
Well, the
expressed.
point of the article wasn't for kids to pursue their passions, although I do have that line in there. I regret it. But what it was really about was telling parents to back off.
Right.
It was called Helicopter Parents or
Yes.
something, and I just got pissed off because I get enough students in my office. The box of Kleenex is always now permanently on the seat next to mine, and no, not next to mine, next to their seat. I don't cry over this, but yeah, but pursuing your passion. The interesting thing about that is there are a lot of people pursuing their passion who shouldn't be really going head on because. And I've interviewed those people in New York for 27 years, and I've seen that some of the students here, and their work just isn't going to really allow them to do what they want to do. And I've seen 35-year-olds in that position
I
who
do
still
a
haven't given
workshop.
up the ghost.
I do a workshop for my students every year, and I tell them in that, yes, when you are burning to do something, you should do it, but you also need to be realistic about the fact that if you're 5'2" and your dream is the NBA, you are not in the right field.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you have to, and it, I believe in a lot of ways that the limitations are the most interesting part of life, not the possibilities. I think we all have 1,000 possibilities that we could have pursued. The interesting part of the limitations. I'm not suited for this. I should take that into account when I make those
And
decisions.
our job, I think, as educators is to help them realize that without slamming them down and discouraging them. And
Exactly.
and it's true. I think one of the most unpopular things I ever said on Facebook was uh, the idea that you can be anything you set your mind to is bullshit.
Right.
For exactly what you just said about that. And I said, I love opera, which is a lie, by the way. I'm just saying that to impress your audience. But let's say I love opera and I want to be an opera singer. I suck at opera.
Right.
And somebody,
can't sing.
I wrote something like that and somebody said, yeah, but you can sing in the shower. And I said, well, okay, that's a different thing.
But you shouldn't necessarily shell out for $100,000 degree to get a degree in
Yeah.
singing opera and then find out you can't do it. So that's
exactly.
Well, these are the ads that are in the back of comic, or used to be in the back of comic books, you know,
Mm.
send $100 and we'll train you to be whatever.
But one good thing about the course that Karl teaches on the creative process, and this is what we and I have talked about this, there are people who are natural born artists like Karl. I mean, Karl will draw on his fingernails if there's nothing left to draw on. I've seen him at meetings. He'll do little faces on his fingernails if there's no paper that he can draw on. He's a born artist. But you can
ADD.
teach somebody enough to be serviceable, or at
Yeah.
least to have that as one of the skills in their tool basket. So when we talk about teaching creativity, how do you teach the creative process?
Well, one of the important things to think about with creativity is what I'm not teaching is this class has 450 students, and I'm not trying to teach them how to be better artists or that kind of creativity. It's really about complex problem solving and applying critical thinking skills to this issue of problem solving, and using the creative process to get you to an innovate to having. I can talk pretty well in class. I'm doing so well here. Coming up with an innovative idea that will solve that problem. And so that it's really about complex problem solving, using creative thinking to in this crazy world we live in. And one of the mistakes, one of the things that's wrong, I think, about creativity is that everybody out there in corporate land wants creative thinkers.
Oh yeah,
They
it's
don't.
the hot buzzword now, isn't
They
it?
really don't. The CEOs do. There was an IBM study about 4 years ago that said that they interviewed 1,500 CEOs around the world in 60 countries and 30 industries, and they unanimously agreed that that creativity was the number one most important quality of a new employee, whereas it used to be a different thing than creativity and creative thinking. The thing is that the CEOs want it, but the people under them don't. The mid-level manager's got to get a job done isn't trying to be creative. The thing inherent to creative ideas is that they're often involve a lot of risk taking,
Yes.
and you would know about that.
Yeah, I think it's, part of it is like, what's the situation you're trying to deal with? Does this require something that's totally creative, innovative, or, you're stuck? Is it what I call an ill-structured problem, actually, Those are the ones you really got to wrap your head around, figure out how to deal with that. Or is it just simply, I got to put 25 of these in a bag and get it out by a certain time?
Yeah.
Now, there's some of that involved at the design and engineering side of that process, maybe some creative thinking about think about what the GM plant here in town or the York plant for Harley Davidson. I mean, they really rethought how they go about constructing or building automobiles or motorcycles and so forth. But then once you got it,
Yeah.
then you do want to follow the process and monitor it and be data driven about that from that point forward.
The way I define a complex problem is it appears to have no obvious solution. There are a lot of problems that don't need a creative
And that's
idea.
in the training or learning literature, that's called it. Some people use the term ill-structured problem.
Oh, I'm going to use that in my class.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
Yeah, I like that.
Because it's just that things don't just land. There are a lot of, as you said, a lot of dimensions that are like just totally like, well, how do we train and how people to get their heads around things that are not well defined as a problem?
Yeah.
The difficulty with this kind of thing is that it is dangerous. I was doing a training with a national training group down in Philadelphia, and it was anti-violence training in public housing. And we used a structured problem-solving model called SARA, Scanning, Analysis, Response, Assessment. You take a look at the problem, you assess it, you analyze it, and you come up with strategies. The team that I worked with decided that the only solution to the problem was to get placards and go march on the mayor's office. And the people that were funding this at the federal government shut us down after the first night of
Well,
our
you know,
three-day
They
experiment. Because it
leapt
was like,
to a
wait a minute,
conclusion really fast.
wait a minute, because this minister said, you know what, they haven't been listening to us for years, we have to get their attention, and this is the most creative solution. Well, that's not exactly what those.
you know, and those
they
aren't
had in
creative
mind.
solutions. Those are traditional thinking solutions. And you know, we tackle big problems like, you know, for example, racism on campus. You know, or we try to deal with things that they know about, so that they don't have to go gather too much knowledge, information about it. Creative ideas are always based on fact and knowledge. So it's different from using your imagination, for instance, and just inventing something for the hell of it.
Yeah.
Creativity involves real world problems and real world knowledge. And so, but you know, so many of these students come up with, and I blame myself. I haven't quite found the right formula to convey exactly how to think in the way they need to. So many of them come up with ideas that, and maybe they're just not motivated to try harder, because it's hard to come up with new ideas that have never been thought of before, that may actually contribute to solving a problem. It doesn't have to be the solution, but contribute to it. And the thing is, is that to solve racism on campus, they'll come up with, have workshops and inform everybody about racism. It's like, that's not going to solve anything. What are you thinking? Really, what are you thinking?
Well, one of the things, this is not as serious as an example, but I'd like to ask Terry, what went in a creative aspect, coming up with an idea for a special event in Lansing called the Grand American Fish Rodeo. I'm saying that, Fish Rodeo.
Boy, does that bring up images?
I mean,
How much time have you got?
yeah, because I mean, it's a creative idea.
It's a creative, artistic idea. It's like, well, it's not. Go
I
ahead.
think I can partly answer it. You know, in the early days of activity in Old Town, we did a thing called the snake rodeo. Snakes is a symbol of transformation. So we asked each artist to put together a piece that had to do with, that had at least one submission of an art piece that had a snake in it. And then we had bands on the street. This is the precursor to Jazz Fest and Blues Fest. Because we were on the Grand River and then we have the fish lab there, I said in one of our brainstormings, our creative forums that we held for like a year of creative conversation about how we could get Old Town to go from what it was a ghost town to what it is today. I suggested, well, why don't we do a fish rodeo? And of course,
Should I laugh now?
besides everybody just
Laugh track.
laugh at me, it clearly, that wasn't even on the back burner, it was just off the stove, you know. And 20, 30 years later, you know, the Lee Lackey, the recently retired director of the Greater Lansing Convention Visitors Bureau, asked me to get together with him and to come up with some ideas of how we could get Lansing on the map. This was the challenge, and we didn't come up with anything. We were trying to engage others in conversation. So, just in passing conversation, I mentioned the phrase fish rodeo, and he laughed. And then he said, "Well, heck,
That'll get national attention.
let's see if the board would support something like that." So it kind of forced me to put together a plan with some people from MICA, the Michigan Institute for Contemporary Art, our creative nonprofit, put together a plan to kind of show them what this could be. And at that time, we were calling it the Great Lakes Fish Rodeo. But anyway, they gave us a little bit of seed money to develop that further, and that turned it into the Great American Fish Rodeo. I'm getting to this here. And then we kind of launched into some like really more deep thinking about what can we do every day, each day, and to build it out. What would the event look like? What would go on? And I'm you know, fish rodeo. It's dissonant. Like he goes, what? These two things don't go together. But everybody smiles when we say it to it. First reaction is a smile, and we get attention. And so then we can continue the conversation. So we went to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources and pitched them. And they said, yeah, it's great. We're on board. We'd like to help. Did you catch that, on board? I mean,
Yeah. There's just a lot of
So-
fish and boat
Metaphors.
here.
Anyway,
Teach a man to
I'm
fish.
counting. I'm keeping count.
So,
Don't get you now.
anyways, they said, I think it was a great idea. They said, you know, great, it's okay, but Grand has a better ring to it. Grand American Fish Rodeo. And by the way, you're on the Grand River.
Oh, there you go.
So,
Perfect.
so now so now what we want everybody to do in Lansing,
Yeah.
this is a branding campaign for Lansing and Michigan, and Pure Michigan gets it. They're on board as well. is to say, have a grand day.
Oh,
So
that's,
instead of
Ah.
saying, so when you sign off, say, have a grand day or have a grand night.
don't you have to say that with Scottish
Oh.
accent? Have a grand day.
Grande.
Have a
Not sure.
grand day.
You can
Yeah,
say
okay.
you have to say have a great day, right? That's pretty common for people to say that
Yeah.
a lot. Maybe not. Maybe you don't. you say get the
I'm
heck
too
out of
family
here.
for
You,
that,
you say you say. But anyways,
Hmm.
that's part of the
Well,
thinking.
there are communities across the United States that have built their entire reputation on festivals and events.
Well,
and-
yes. For example, so we looked at well, what's going on. So as we got deeper into this, we said, and Texas is known for rodeos, cowboys, and all that. Michigan's got rivers, lakes, streams. 1 person in 10 in Michigan own a boat. I mean, you're never more than
I
six
don't know
miles.
any of those people.
You're never more
Darn.
than 6 miles away
Except,
from a river, lake, or
except
stream.
in Lansing.
But we're in
Yeah.
the center of the state. Okay?
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. The center of the Great
Center of the
Lakes.
state,
We're
yeah.
the capital of the Great Lakes. You can look at it a lot of different ways. But
So what
So-
will they do at a fish
Well, can I just point out you've got rubber fish derby,
well, we got
all these stuff. But the fashion show is what I don't understand.
well, the fashion show you have to have like a certain percentage of fishing net in your outfit.
Oh, cool! I was
I
trying to.
see.
Well,
I
that
was trying
might
to
get us
figure out the
national
time.
attention.
There are prizes for
Fashion show.
everything.
Yeah.
Prizes for it. So we have a writing contest, canoeing and kayak races, fishing competitions. There'll be a lot of fish in the water. We have there'll be some demonstrations like fly tying, boat parade. I mean, we've got a lot. We've got I think 3 different types of boats, so you can discover the river. What I was getting at in Texas and Michigan, by the way, is San Antonio, Texas, has a little canal, and they've got $1 billion industry around
The
it.
Riverwalk.
So my point is,
Mm,
Michigan,
stinks.
Lansing has a really cool, great. If you haven't been on it, you're missing the boat.
I've kayaked on it.
It's
It
gorgeous.
is beautiful.
It's gorgeous, and because the way the city developed, early cities, they were the drainage canals for the city, so all the backs of the buildings were built against them. Well, now that's starting to change, and we think this will bring more environmental awareness, more attention to the river, and maybe more, effective development along the river, and that could really help. This is why the CVB likes it, bring more people to come to Lansing to experience. I mean, it seems so underutilized. We now have what's it called? I think Metro Marina has that paddle boat in water taxi
Yeah, I've seen
downtown.
that.
But
That's yeah.
we could do so
Are
much
we in
more.
danger of ruining our riverbanks here for that kind of thing, though? I
Oh,
take a
no.
look at the Lansing City Market, and now that they're putting that other ugly building right next to it with no parking. I
Well,
mean, it seems to me that we're kind of ruining that area.
no, I think the whole idea is to help develop it. Because right now, if you look up and down the stream, I mean, there's overgrowth, there's parks that have not been, exactly cared
Right.
for. There could be better development, and I think with,
I think
They
environmental
put an
awareness now.
ill-advised state police thing backing up
Yeah,
to the river.
all those things. So
I mean,
if we
we've
get-
made a lot of mistakes,
Right.
haven't we, with what
Well,
we've done?
over many years, and many
Yeah.
cities have done that, but I think if we bring proper attention to it, and there'll be some economic opportunity around that, hopefully for some people to make it function. But this is a campaign to get people from around the country to discover Michigan and discover Lansing,
And that was
in a whole different way than we've ever done. Because we can
Do you
we can only
foresee
grow.
Lansing as becoming some sort of tourist mecca?
Well,
Is that a goal
not like
for
New
the
York City, but tourism is what our number 3 industry in the state.
In the state, yeah. It's
Okay.
tied number 2 with that.
But Lansing does not have a lot of tourism
Right.
business, so there could be a lot more, and this is one way to bring attention both to Lansing and to Michigan. It's not, we're not going to necessarily be a
Right.
tourism mecca, but might draw enough attention. For example, we thought, well, if we can get this event to, as this event evolves, we might draw some like major national conventions around boating or fishing, National Fly Tyers Association, because there'll all be all this cool stuff going on around them, and that brings more attention. People might come here to experience. Once you discover a place,
it's
you
an
like it,
it's an
you come
economic
back.
decision too.
Absolutely.
It's funny, but the river thing. If you want to talk about a city that really screwed up their river, Los Angeles is the city that I'm
Right.
from
They
LA.
They buried.
They
We've
buried
seen-
it and poured concrete in case it
Jacksonville, too.
rains.
We've
but
all seen Chinatown.
It's
we know.
really, yeah, we've all seen Chinatown. If you haven't, that's a really good movie. But one of the great things about Chicago is the riverfront
Yes.
with all the buildings
Yes.
up against it. And I think that there's so much beauty on either end of Lansing on the river that I've gone kayaking up there, and it's really beautiful. I think a city you want kind of an urban kind of, but at least I do. I like I like walkways along buildings with river, and
I love the river,
I
the
like
river
successful,
walk is.
but I think you know, you're right. I think you want to make sure that the buildings that are put there are something that enhances the look and feel.
We
Successful
of the
always
city.
see
cities.
the plans where there's going to be these beautiful tables down by the river and, you know, canopies and all this, and somehow that part never gets built. I don't know
That's
what
not true.
happened.
That's not true. That's not true.
Well,
I mean,
Well, not here,
Old Town is quite different than what it used to be when we were there. So, you know,
Old Town looks good.
so it can happen. is
Well,
all-
look at
all I'm saying.
Accident Fund right now has got a beautiful walkway out front, and it's
We have one of the longest urban river walks in the country
Right,
in Lansing. But,
The river walk
you know,
is
for I know Misha talks about it in terms of placemaking, but, you know, vibrant cities have strong urban cores.
Mhm.
People living, you know, not just working downtown, but living and working, playing in their downtowns. And whatever we can do to kind of enhance that, and certainly, you know, a great river with things going on that river will help achieve
Well,
that.
you know, I think it looks at the river differently. I live on the river. This year I've heard, and you can hear them, more boaters, kayakers, motorboats.
Mm.
The water's high enough you can run a motorboat than I ever have in 30 some years.
Really?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I hear them all the time on Saturday and
And
Sunday.
that's through the efforts of Terry and
Well,
his friends.
I think it's gonna change.
Helps.
I
after
mean, it's
this-
kind of,
in
and
a few
last
weeks.
weekend I was downtown and there was like a half dozen kayakers right around Accident Fund.
By the way, this event is coming right up. It's like
Yeah, tell us when.
June 12th, 13th, and 14th. We kick off Thursday night, and then Friday daytime and night, and Saturday. And we've got an incredible lineup of entertainment in addition to all these
Where
competitions.
will
Can I
all
talk
these
about the
events be?
prizes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
relocated.
Adado Riverfront Park.
So it's
That-
not
that-
in Old Town, this one.
No,
This is
no,
gonna
no.
be a riverfront
Yeah,
park
yeah.
arrangement, yeah.
No, I can talk about the prizes?
Yeah, well, I think this is LCC radio, Bill will look this up while I explain it. This is LCC radio,
You can.
WLNZ 89.7. Prizes, yes, I think. You
Yeah.
can't talk, we can't talk money, but we could talk prizes.
Okay, well, there's
Or
money
you
involved.
can't-
you
There's money
can't-
involved in some of the prizes.
Well, just mention money involved in some of the prizes, but don't know how
If
much.
you go to
and
the
can't-
website, grandamericanfishrodeo.com, you can see what's there. But we have the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Fishing Tournament. There are like 8 entry types. No, excuse me, I was wrong about that. There are fishing, I think it's Friday morning and Thursday afternoon, or excuse me, Friday afternoon and Saturday morning.
So how many fish
Um,
you catch or
but-
how big they
but-
are.
Yeah, and so let me just give an example. You know, the first prize is a full day 4-person Great Lakes salmon charter with Captain Mark McClutchy aboard the Diabolical. You know, we have, you know, every prize
Relates to water.
area, yeah, it's boating, fishing, or monitoring, probably value over $1,000 in all the major ones. So there's great opportunity here to have a lot of fun, and I forgot to mention we also have a fish tattoo contest.
Uh-oh.
So Bruce,
Temporary
Bruce
tattoo?
Pets, no, this is a real. Bruce Pets and Fish Ladder Tattoo, I think, are involved in this one, but yeah,
You get the tattoo or you design the tattoo?
you come with your tattoo that has to do with fish or
Oh,
boating.
that
It's on the
already
website.
exists.
Yeah, and you'll get some prizes for
Are
that.
there some
Right.
restrictions on body parts? Because this could
Yeah,
be
well,
really
there'll be-
interesting.
Yeah, there'll be some limitations there. It's on the website. Go see what those.
Are there
those-
anybody
those
who tattoos a fish on a delicate body part?
Mermaids?
Could be. I don't know. I don't remember all
Well,
the
yeah,
details.
mermaids would wear.
Mermaids used to be very
Probably-
popular tattoos, and I haven't seen one.
Probably.
in
Sailors.
years. Yeah,
Yeah,
sailors used
probably
to have one.
that.
Well, I'm really disappointed
A
that
rubber
fish,
duck derby.
that fashion contest wasn't making little tiny clothes for fish. That's what.
See, that's
That may
creativity.
be next. That may be next year. But
You know,
also-
just,
See, that's what happens when you
You
put
gotta get him on
creative
the, you gotta get him on the planning.
I was just
Yeah,
already
sure.
designing a little suit and tie for fish.
everything's
You
possible.
know,
You
a
know,
ball gown.
we generated over 100 different ideas that we could do, and I said,
Oh.
okay,
I
let's-
can't even imagine how much fun that was.
Oh, it was a riot.
I
It was a
can't even
riot. And then we just
imagine.
said, okay, what can we do realistically this first year? Give it limited time and limited budget to do it, and let's find folks in that. So another thing is we really got some good partners, like the Michigan DNR is organizing 25 different displays, exhibits, and information booths. They'll be able to register and get your fishing license right on site. But things having to do with environmental education or things about keeping your boat clean from
Little buggers that
yeah.
grab on
I
the
think there's
bottom.
even a temporary tattoo thing that have those invasive species tattoo things that they're doing.
Those mussels, the zebra
Yeah,
mussels?
whatever,
Zebra
yeah.
mussels,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Things like that. So we've got that going on, but we got Saturday afternoon we've got some great ethnic music. We've invited different groups to perform things that relate to their culture in terms of boating or fishing or water. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday night we've got a great lineup of country acts. Dial Dixie, Chris Hitchcock and Small Town Sun, North Country Flyers, Annabelle Rhodes Friday night. Saturday we've got let's see.
What do you have in the way of fish food?
Bitter Creek, fish fry. Bitter Creek, Midnight Cattle Callers, and Claire Dunn. So there's some great country acts here. But our plan is to maybe eventually do a competition, kind of the high end, like of Michigan Fish, where we offer some big prizes and draw some like this big cooking show like competitors to that. But
Any
we do have
PCB
somebody
testing along the way?
PCB. We are,
He's trying to make this a show about.
like, you are what you think, what you focus on, you get. So we try to focus on the positive. But anyways, we are stocking the river. We're also stocking the river with good, clean, certified
Really?
farm fish.
You're
So
stocking the river?
We're adding some
Oh
extra
my
inside.
gosh.
Are there gonna be catfish there? Because I could go.
Yes.
Farm raised?
There'll be. I don't know that it's that. I don't know. Probably, but not.
Yeah,
I
I
know they
think
have to be
they would have
certified.
to be.
You can't add without a lot of hoopla or hoops to go through to make sure that you're not introducing anything inappropriate into,
Yeah, I
into
can
the river.
imagine.
So it's really
I can
highly
imagine.
regulated. I did want to. Oh, we have a bucking bass. A
Hmm.
mechanical
for you sit
bull.
on like a
Like
mechanical
a
bull.
mechanical bull?
Yeah.
Remember those
Called
bass?
bass.
Remember those bass?
That's the
plaques?
photo, by the way, guys.
Oh, yeah, the singing
The
bass.
singing bass.
Yes, we need some of those.
First time I ever
The
saw one of
There's
those.
your, there's your award
It
program.
was scary.
Everybody gets a singing
If
bass
you can even
flag.
buy them these
I
things,
thought
you're probably
that
gonna
was-
get
I
on
think
like
that
eBay.
to this
Yeah, you
day,
can.
that's
They
the
become
funniest
somewhat
thing I ever saw.
collectible.
Yeah.
So that again is June, what dates?
12th, 13th, and 14th.
14th. So if you show up on Friday night, Saturday and Sunday, there's gonna be something going
Not
on.
Sunday, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Thursday, Friday,
But it
Saturday.
is Father's Day weekend, so it's a great opportunity
Ah.
to bring your dad out, take him fishing, take him boating.
Yeah.
It'd be a great
yeah.
early Father's Day gift as
Huh.
well.
And
You know,
basically takes place downtown.
Downtown, right downtown, at Dotto Riverfront Park, kind of where the waterfront is and that whole area.
I gotta ask Carl. So Carl, if you were telling your students they had to figure out a plan to brand this,
Nice segue.
yes,
Good segue.
how do you brand?
Well, I'm not a branding instructor.
But you're talking about, you wanted to start brand journalism. You wanted us to consider,
He's the branding.
The
What's
fish
that?
rodeo.
you
Yeah.
wanted
a
us, you
branding
wanted us to look into
contest.
brand journalism, which is allowing people who want to brand their products to sort of use your tools to get their message out.
Right. I think that I'm more of a social media outreach marketing
Okay.
kind of a guy, and
Alright.
I love that. And
So we need a
Talk about that.
hashtag for this.
well,
that.
hashtags are kind of Twitter's kind of
Mm,
not
it
what
is,
it used
I
to
know
be,
it is.
and
I don't spend as much
there's
time.
a-
on
you
it.
know,
to jump on Bonnie's question, so with what you do, how would you apply it to what we're doing?
well, I was just thinking about. I've just been in two cities that have great rivers. Bragging. I was giving a talk at South by Southwest in Austin. Has an amazing river
Yes.
community. My wife and I took a walk on this beautiful river on a very steamy hot day. Everyone, I swear, all of Austin was on that river. There were boats. There were those big surfboardy looking things with
Yes.
paddles. That,
Paddleboard.
Every-
Stand up.
every bikini and bathing suit in Austin was out on those things, and we were stunned at how incredibly involved they were with their local river. And Austin, and that, I don't think that had anything to do with any of the other stuff that Austin's doing, with all of the South by Southwest activities and such. I think that's just a local thing. They love their river. And I was just in Washington on the Potomac, right on Georgetown's shores. There was a new rental place that opened up, and my friend had gone there and already with her friend. She thought it was just going to be like a half hour. Let's just see if this is any fun. They were out for 3 hours on one of those big surfboards with the paddles, and we drove by there, and I couldn't believe. Of course, it was Memorial Day weekend, but the sheer number of people pouring out onto the Potomac River. I used to live in Washington. I had never seen that, and it might be interesting to see what they're doing to promote their rivers because. But you have something way more unique than any of those people, and I'm sorry, but a fish fry, a fish rodeo is
What kind of fish you frying?
yeah, what kind of fish you fry? I mean, I think that the thing about social media marketing and outreach is that the message has to be something that people want to share, that is unique, probably humorous, probably self-effacing, or very deep and meaningful in some way. And there's a lot of traditional media that there's no one way to do it, but you have to be wherever the audiences are. So, like I was mentioning Pinterest to somebody the other day, and it's mostly women on Pinterest. I said yes, but that's a ginormous audience.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
know.
Right, this happens. you're right. But then we have people who boat, people who fish. It's figuring out. So it's new for us because we've been focused on jazz and art and blues.
Right,
flowers.
right.
So like it is a shift in thinking, but
It's still pretty. All of the things you're offering are really fun and cool. Go ahead.
but the other thing I wanted to mention is that because we have a competition base of this, we looked at learned a bit from Art Prize, and we can't. Art Prize does a great job with what they do, so we and I think partly what they liked about CVB liked about it was kind of wacky and whimsical, and that's okay, and so we're really trying to take carve out our niche, if you will, and make that work, but it has the elements of bringing a lot of different groups together to work on it versus one organization running it all, and then it also has the prize element to it, which can bring a lot of people in eventually.
One of the challenges, as Karl will tell you, is that when you're starting a new event, you have no pictures, you have no cool stuff from last year that you can retread. So one of the challenges is to try to use social media. I mean, Instagram isn't going to be useful to you yet until you get some of those cool pictures.
Well,
from,
unless you can lure people in, if you can
Lure
lure people
people in.
that was my
Get 'em
one
hooked.
attempt at a metaphor. What's the word?
Take the bait, get the
Yeah,
Take the bait.
Yeah, you gotta get them to take the bait. God. Wait, I have another one. Wait, forget what we're talking about. I gotta think of
They
these
can
things.
link together 40 of these in a 2-minute speech, wins an award.
You can teach a man to fish. What's that?
You
Huh?
can teach
Yeah.
a man to fish.
Don't ask them to swim.
But basically, you want to get people to want to participate in the social media aspects of it. So you can start on your end and come up with something ridiculously cool and funny, or something that everybody just has to share, or you can get people to come in and want to. These competitions you talk about, there are a lot of kind of social media kind of competitions that people can enjoy, and like Dave Polson at the School of Journalism had the invasive species. What's the carp?
Yeah.
He just went on Facebook or on their website and put up 5 pictures of carp, and he said, Facebook this carp into any situation you want.
Right.
Send it in,
Carp diem.
and we'll pick the winner, and we'll show the top 10 best Facebook things. And those were so many people wanted to do that, and
Yes.
and they put it on their Facebook, and their friends shared it. These ridiculous pictures of them being attacked by carp in downtown Chicago, and really funny, being eaten by carp. And so it was just a way that it lured people in. They took the bait, and they all wanted to play. It was irresistible, and he didn't even. It was no effort. It was so seamlessly, beautifully perfect.
Do you have a guy in a fish suit?
We've talked about that, but I think actually the DNR has 2 different gills. I don't remember precisely what it is, but I think there are a lot of things for kids, things like that.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking of how successful Glenn Stutzky was with his zombie apocalypse class.
Yeah.
And he just had a zombie stumble across campus for a few days. And that always had a buzz going because people could grab Instagram, share them, do that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
that guy had a great title. Fish Rodeo is a great title.
it is.
Yeah,
It is.
and
The title.
we really want it to be not just the Lansing event. I mean, so we're really trying to think outside of.
Yeah, you could
even outside.
You
of
could have a
Michigan,
fish
but
rodeo in Austin and on the Potomac.
you could do that too. But we do want to draw them here, but we want to reach out.
Well,
A series of fish rodeos around the country.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking of.
You're right.
Well, I'm just thinking. I'm a franchise kind of thing. Like, how can you really franchise this out and everybody pays you a little bit of money? If it really is an economic thing.
If we get one to work well, then
That's why we've
you
got
just
Karl.
create a great model and just tell everybody to use our model, like the TED Talks or something. But,
That's why we've got Karl working on brand journalism there at MSU and trying to figure out where we're going to head with that.
well, I have a lot of thoughts about that, but we don't have time to talk about it. But
We'll have to have you back and we'll talk entrepreneurial journalism and brand journalism. But we've had 2 very creative thinkers on the show tonight. We want to thank Terry of Message Makers with the upcoming Fish Rodeo, which will be next week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and it'll be downtown at the Dado Riverfront Park. And my friend Karl Gude, who is my colleague at MSU School of Journalism and who also teaches in the college with the Media Sandbox. And we didn't give the Media Sandbox enough credit. It's a really creative part of the college experience there, where they brought together a group of people who are all about creativity and trying to understand that it is more than just, as you say, having a great idea once or having something
Yeah, it's
imaginative.
the creative
It's learning a process of how you
yeah,
make this
it's
happen.
greatest thing that yeah, it's great.
And we will return next Monday night. You can come and join us at 7 o'clock here at Lansing Online News Radio on LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. This is Bonnie Bucqueroux and Bill Castaneer. And I'm hoping that next week we will return to the theme of violence against women. We have some interesting information about what is called coerced debt. And to show you, I didn't even know what that topic was, but I'm hoping next week we'll be able to have a brief discussion about that. We will see you next Monday night, 7 o'clock, here at LCC Radio, WLNZ. Thank you very much for tuning in.